Joining us now for World Brief and the review of some of the headlines of today's newspapers from around the world is Adefemi Akinsanya. Good morning, Adefemi.
Good morning, Dr. Reuben. Good morning, Ayo, and good morning, Rufai.
Adefemi.
Hey. Good morning to you two viewers. Let me tell you what's happening around the world. Well, there have been mixed reactions after US-based rapper Nicki Minaj delivered the keynote address at a United States mission to the United Nations conference in New York. She used the platform to call for unity and to insist that no group should be persecuted because of their faith. Let's take a listen.
In Nigeria, Christians are being targeted, driven from their homes, and killed. Churches have been burned. Families have been torn apart, and entire communities live in fear constantly, simply because of how they pray. Sadly, this problem is not only a growing problem in Nigeria, but also in so many other countries across the world, and it demands urgent action. And I want to be clear. Protecting Christians in Nigeria is not about taking sides or dividing people. It is about uniting humanity. Nigeria is a beautiful nation with deep faith traditions and lots of beautiful barbs that I can't wait to see.
Well, as we've just heard, Minaj called for increased international attention, of course, to the killing of Christians in Nigeria, and also urged people to prioritize civilian protection and to strengthen monitoring mechanisms. But intervention does draw swift reaction online and, of course, among diplomats. Now, supporters to what Nicki Minaj had to say have commended the value of broader advocacy, while critics, however, have questioned the expanding role of celebrity figures in formal diplomatic forums. Well, meanwhile, the much-anticipated appearance of Nigeria's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Yusuf Tuggar, on Piers Morgan's Uncensored show has been broadcast, showing a series of fiery debates over claims of Christian genocide in Nigeria, the burning of churches, and Donald Trump's threat of military intervention. Let's take a look at some of what Minister Tuggar had to say.
We in Nigeria have Christians, we have Muslims, we have atheists, we have animists, and when we're counting death tolls, we don't necessarily go by religion, and quite often it's difficult to even identify what religion an individual that has just lost their lives belongs to.
You dispute the numbers of Christians that have been reported to have been killed, but you have no idea how many Christians have been killed. What we surely can agree on is how many Christian churches have been destroyed. Do you know how many?
52 churches, depending on which region, again, you are referring to. Because since the last 5 years, the attacks, not destroyed, attacks on churches, 102.
Foreign Minister, do you condemn the attacks and the murder on Christians by Islamist groups in Nigeria?
Absolutely, 100%. I lost my father-in-law to an attack by an Islamic terrorist group, Boko Haram. So I myself am a victim. I've lost family members to attacks. And they were Muslims, but it doesn't matter whether they're Muslim or Christian.
Well, as you just saw there, Minister Tuggar did appear alongside Canadian former Member of Parliament Goldie Gambari, who fiercely defended the plight of Christians. However, she did make some mistakes in her commentary. She referred to Nigeria as a country with a parliamentarian system, which, as we know, is incorrect. And she also said that Nigeria's constitution mandates a Muslim-Christian balance between a president and a vice president, also incorrect. That was before she accused the Tinubu administration of being Islamists who collude with Iran, but gave no evidence to support her claim. Let's also not forget that Nigerian Muslims are predominantly Sunni, while Iranians are mostly Shiites. Nevertheless, let's take a listen to some of her fiery comments.
If it walks like a duck and it talks like a duck, it probably is a duck. There is a reason that we're seeing these Islamic militants going around and yelling Allahu Akbar. That's not by coincidence. There's a reason that they are attacking Christians on Christmas Eve. Let's not forget that back in 2014, almost 300 Christian schoolgirls were kidnapped by these Islamic militants. 80 of them, their whereabouts are still unknown. Piers, what's happening in Nigeria is jihad. It's the exact same thing that happened on October 7 by Islamists when they broke into Israel and murdered Jews, yelling Allahu Akbar. I think his government is complicit. Right now, you have an Islamist government in Nigeria. One of the things that he didn't mention to you is that typically it's been a constitutional convention in Nigeria that if the prime minister is Muslim, then if the president is Muslim, then the vice president is Christian. If the president is Christian, then the vice president is Muslim. This is intended to have a proper representation of the Nigerian population. Right now, you have a Muslim president, and then they decided to choose a Muslim vice president, and so there is actually no Christian representation in the Islamist government. By the way, this is a government that is working closely behind the scenes with the Islamic Republic of Iran. You should ask the foreign minister why Nigerian school children are holding pictures of the Ayatollah, who is a brutal dictator and is murdering my people in Iran. People need to look into the linkages between the current Nigerian government and the Islamic Republic of Iran.
So those were very fiery statements she made there. Often, some of what she said was unsubstantiated, but I am looking forward to hearing what you've all got to say. Moving on now, and Saudi Arabian Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman's one-day visit at the White House has come to an end with the pledge that Saudi Arabia can increase this $600 billion investment in the United States to $1 trillion. Indeed, his visit was a state visit in everything but name, but President Trump greeted MBS on the South Lawn with full ceremonial honors, a military honor guard, a cannon salute, and a flyover by US fighter jets as the two leaders moved to the Oval Office for talks. Now, for them, the focus of the visit was money, trade, and investment. But for some of the journalists in the room, their focus was elsewhere. Now, Trump was harsh with ABC's chief White House correspondent, Mary Bruce, who asked a valid question about the murder and dismemberment of Jamal Khashoggi, a fellow journalist. Now, this is despite the fact that the CIA concluded that Mohammed bin Salman, the Saudi crown prince, ordered the assassination. Now, his comments went a step further, that is Trump, when he was also asked about why the Epstein files hadn't been released. Let's take a listen to what President Trump had to say.
And Your Royal Highness, the U.S. intelligence concluded that you orchestrated the brutal murder of a journalist. 9/11 families are furious that you are here in the Oval Office. Why should Americans trust you? And the same to you, Mr. President.
Now, who are you with?
I'm with ABC News, sir.
You're with who?
ABC News, sir.
Fake news. ABC fake news. One of the worst in the business. I think you are a terrible reporter. It's the way you ask these questions. You start off with a man who's highly respected, asking him a horrible, insubordinate and just a terrible question. As far as this gentleman is concerned, he's done a phenomenal job. You're mentioning somebody that was extremely controversial. A lot of people didn't like that gentleman that you're talking about. Whether you like him or didn't like him, things happen. But he knew nothing about it, and we can leave it at that. You don't have to embarrass our guest by asking a question like that.
Just you ask, Mr. President, you allow me to answer. You know, I feel painful about, families of 9/11 in America, but, we have to focus on reality. About the journalists, it's really painful to hear, anyone that been losing his life for, no real purpose or not in a legal way, and it's been painful for us in Saudi Arabia.
Yes, he said it's very painful for them in Saudi Arabia. Well, our last story on today's World Brief is Eswatini's government publicly acknowledging receiving more than $5 million from the United States as part of a deal to accept dozens of deportees under Washington's aggressive mass deportation program. Eswatini's finance minister told the parliament the funds were transferred to the National Disaster Management Agency account, though he stressed the money cannot be spent until it is formally appropriated by the budget. He admitted his ministry was not fully consulted during those negotiations. However, under the written agreement, Eswatini committed to take up to 160 deportees in exchange for $5.1 million intended to enhance his border and migration management capacity. So far, 15 men have arrived, 5 in July on a chartered US military flight and 10 in early October. Now, Human Rights Watch and the Eswatini Litigation Center have filed court cases questioning the constitutionality of the agreement and demanding transparency. Well, those are our well-briefed stories. Before I come over to my colleagues for their comments, let's take a look at the newspaper headlines from across Nigeria and indeed the world. Firstly, of course, we begin with the front page of This Day. This Day leads with that report that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is depressed over the abduction of 25 students from the Government Girls Comprehensive Secondary School in Maga over in Kebbi State, and the killing, of course, of Brigadier General Musa Uba by insurgents. Now, Tinubu has also assured parents of the students that their safe return will be imminent. He also asked Vice President Kashim Shettima to visit Kebbi to sympathise with the state government and the families. He's also sent condolences to the military over the fallen soldiers. Meanwhile, President Tinubu is scheduled to depart Abuja. He's already on his way, I believe, to heading over to South Africa for the G20 summit. He'll also then make his way over to Angola for the African Union, European Union summit also. Let's move on to our next paper. We're going to take a look at the Vanguard. The Vanguard also reports that President Tinubu has sent President Kashim Shettima to Kebbi State to reassure parents. That is, of course, as the army intensifies efforts to rescue these 25 schoolgirls abducted from the school, their secondary school, the Government Girls Secondary School in Maga. Now, this is where the vice principal was also killed, unfortunately. The Senate has called for the recruitment of 100,000 additional security personnel, while international bodies, including UNICEF, have condemned this attack. The Daily Trust, however, does take a different look. Of course, its front page is dedicated to some of the students who were unfortunately abducted. It does feature also the account of a student who described how bandits stormed their school and carried out the attack. Moving on to the New Telegraph and the Daily Independent, we've got a double whammy today. Now, both of these papers report on the PDP debacle. They do say that the party is in deep crisis with a fierce supremacy battle tearing through the party's national leadership. Now, the papers highlight the clashes between factions loyal to Bala Mohammed, Seyi Makinde and Nyesom Wike, which has escalated into chaos at the party's headquarters. Police fired tear gas to disperse rival supporters, while senior party members traded accusations of expulsions, intimidation and abuse of power. Now, the Daily Independent also adds that over 600 security operatives and thugs reportedly surrounded the PDP secretariat. That was as Turaki attempted to assume office, prompting warnings that the turmoil poses a serious threat to internal democracy. Let's take a look at the Daily Sun. The Daily Sun reports just up here, it's an expose on how Nestle is facing criticism over allegations that it adds sugar to baby food products sold in Nigeria. Health advocates and consumer groups say the practice raises concerns about nutrition and transparency, prompting calls for stricter regulation and clearer labeling standards. Now, the issues highlighted here, it does echo findings from a report here at Arise News called Bittersweet. This was the investigative report that I put together alongside Leila Johnson-Salami and also with the help of our dearly departed Somi Maduagu as our Abuja-based producer. Now, we examined sugar levels in infant foods and highlighted the potential long-term risks for children. Now, staying with the Daily Sun, just to the top here, we can see that the Christian Association of Nigeria has also welcomed the United States' offer to help Nigeria tackle killings and insecurity. Now, CAN President Archbishop Daniel Oko said, speaking at the body's quarterly meeting in Jos, he did reaffirm that there is a Christian genocide in the country, and he has called for justice, accountability, and the resettlement of all displaced persons. Now, he's also urged Christian leaders to remain steadfast and prayerful, noting that the meeting's location in Jos symbolizes resilience and faith, with hope that the outcomes will advance national unity and peace. Moving on to UK papers, let's take a look at the Financial Times today. The Financial Times is also looking at international relations between the United Kingdom and China. You've got the UK government issuing a warning to China, stating that Britain will not tolerate any attempts to interfere in its political processes. The statement follows concerns raised by MI5 or MI15 MI5 rather, over alleged efforts to influence members of parliament, which officials described as covert and calculated operations. And then lastly, for our fans of this program, it's called Line of Duty. It is back if you do care to watch. It is an amazing drama. And so it's on the front page of the Daily Star today. It does lead with the news that this crime drama, Line of Duty, will return for its 7th series. The broadcaster, BBC, has confirmed that the new 6-part season, written by the creator Jed Mercurio, it will be filmed and is on its way. So those are your well-briefed stories and your newspaper. Absolutely, we will take a very quick chat on these stories. Go ahead.
I mean, if I can quickly make a chart, Femi, kudos to you on that, your documentary. You can see that the truth has now been exposed, and kudos on that. As regards Minister Tuggar, he flunked all the lines on the data. And please, we would like to challenge him. 177 Christians killed in 5 years. What happened in Yelata? What happened in the Christian, Christmas Day Eve killings? What happened in Owo? Calculate those numbers, let's see the facts. As regards the woman C, the truth is, yes, Minister Tuggar can pick on the little point she flip-flop on. The fact that, yes, there's a constitutional consensus. There's no constitutional consensus, between having a Christian and a Muslim card. It's just like a normal convention, which President Tinubu alluded to. So she flunked her lines on that. But on the part where she said the president and the prime minister, she finally corrected herself, the president and the vice president. The third part I want to talk about, she was actually correct. Nigeria has relations with Iran, but there's the El Zakzaki group here, that's a Shiite group that Nigerian government has had loggerheads with. So we cannot deceive ourselves that there's been loggerheads as regards that. And lastly, on the, on the other line that she made, that she talked about the fact that there's been a lot of killings and all of that. She brought us in with her own fact. The minister couldn't bring us back. It was on the 4th occasion, or the 3rd occasion, when they asked the minister, okay, what are the numbers of the Christians being killed in the country? Before he finally came out and said, okay, 177. So we have to challenge him on those facts. I mean, there are many things I have to say, but my head is being screamed off here.
So for that interview, I was more interested in the minister's response, because that's the man that's responsible to the Nigerian people as part of this Tinubu government. One of the issues, or the biggest takeaway for me from that interview, is that we have a massive data problem, and it's one of the reasons why the government cannot effectively respond to problems that we have. I say this because when he was asked on the population numbers, he said 230 million. Where did he get the data from? Is it the World Health Organization or World Bank's projected population census? When last did we have a census in Nigeria? Right. When he was asked about the number of Christians that were being killed, he said, oh, they don't check their, religion when they die. But he was able to give 177. And Piers challenged him on that number, but you said that you don't check their religion when they pass away. But if it seems that when we have a nation that's polarized, especially along religious divide, you have to check those things, because how then can you confidently defend the fact that there's no genocide if you don't even know the nature of the people that are being killed? And so Nigerian government cannot, unfortunately, effectively defend their position because they actually don't know the true picture of what is happening. And unfortunately, that was glaring in that interview. They do not actually have a clue about what's going on.
Okay, beyond whatever emotional response anyone may have to this subject, can we go into the territory of theory and knowledge? Which is to say that the American government seems to be ahead in this game, if you may use the word game. Because Trump said, oh, the Nigerians, they think that this thing is a joke. Look, in diplomacy, this is also a problem of diplomacy. And I say the Americans are ahead because there's something that is called traditional diplomacy. There's also modern diplomacy. Traditional diplomacy is government to government. When Trump speaks and he directs more and Cole and Hexet, he's doing, traditional diplomacy, which is government to government, a lot of secrecy, a lot of formality. Now the Americans have gone ahead in labeling Nigeria to what is called modern diplomacy, which is where you bring non-state actors, you bring personalities, you do public diplomacy, you do cultural diplomacy, and that's where you will have, a person like Nicki Minaj being brought forward. Now, yesterday I may have characterized her and all of that, but the issue is that they are bringing personalities. The Gambari of Canada, it's interesting to see that there's a Miss Gambari coming from Canada and a Trinidadian Miss Nicki Minaj from America. So they have expanded the scope of the engagement with Nigeria. And Nigeria is still trying traditional diplomacy. So we have to learn. That's why I was saying that we need adults in the room. We need experts in the room. If America takes one step, diplomacy is a subject that is studied, that is established. So Nigeria should just go beyond denial and being, reactive to also play the games at a professional level. I'm probably giving free advice for which I will not be paid. And as to the issue of PDP, the role of the police is to be deployed, condemned, because what we saw yesterday was a police for hire situation. One faction hires a faction of the police, another faction hires a faction of the police, and then the two factions failed to be neutral. That in itself is condemnable. Well, we're told we have no more time.
All right. Thank you so much, Adefemi. So many things to talk about, including that sugar news. I think it's an important one, especially for our babies and the risk of diabetes later on in life and other related diseases.